I believe the Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization.
Well, you've seen the reports that there's a possibility of trying to designate it as such.
How did this come about? Was it because of the President of Egypt's visit? Is that when it came up?
No, not necessarily.
Can I ask about infrastructure today? The president's going to be hosting Democrats here today. We know the last two times they met, one was tensions that we witnessed on television, the other one tensions that we didn't see that took place in the Situation Room. What should we anticipate, and how much direct federal money would the president be willing to spend on this?
It's an unusual meeting. It's just the Democrats and those who head up a number of the different committees, and certainly those in leadership, extended leadership. So we welcome this meeting. They requested the meeting. The president and Speaker Pelosi have spoken at length, and in fact the president tweeted about it within the last 2 months, that when they hung up the phone, they agreed to work on some of the big issues together, including infrastructure, drug pricing. So we're happy they're coming here, but it has to be about infrastructure. And infrastructure are crumbling bridges, our roads in disrepair, something like 250 or 60,000 water main breaks a year, I've read. Obviously, our air traffic control system was built for about 100,000 annual air passengers. We're up to close to 1 billion air passengers. I think we can all agree it's a completely nonpartisan issue that we would have more safety and less hassle at the airports and on the tarmac and the like. And so we also have as our president a builder, not a typical politician. So he understands how to repair and construct and plan and execute on big projects as well. So if they're serious about that, that's great. I read the letter yesterday, and hopefully they're coming here not to try to shove the Green New Deal that couldn't make it through Congress with a single Democratic vote into the infrastructure package, but we'll be listening.
How much money is the president willing to give in direct federal spending for this?
I'll be right to you, Kevin and Paul. Thank you. So, Peter, you always want to go to where the money is. It's always more. Is it more money for drugs? Is it more money for healthcare? Is it more money for?
That's been the challenge for years on this.
Well, it's one of the challenges. The other challenge is that do we even agree on what is defined by infrastructure? I just told you what we think infrastructure is. We think infrastructure is what America thinks infrastructure is, which is that they don't want bridges to be in disrepair and roads to be crumbling and the dangers that go with that. And obviously, I believe there's like an 80-20 split in terms of the federal money that goes to these different communities, and we're happy to help that. I think that some of them believe it's also about building schools and hospitals or dog parks and more bike trails. So maybe that's for negotiation, because we have to have a very big, robust plan to help these. You've read before, and I'm sure you all know the date, and if you don't, you'll pull it before 10:30 when they arrive, that just the number of roads and bridges that are way behind scheduled repair is very dangerous. And we've seen some tragedies in that regard, so that has to stop.
Can you explain
Kevin and then Paula.
Kellyanne.
And what support should we expect to give Juan Guaido as the people in that country try to make their own determination about their leadership?
Yes, and we support the people of Venezuela. We're sad that they have been starved by Maduro. They've been denied food and medicine and basic humanitarian needs having been met. The United States has gotten supplies there to them. Sometimes those have been obstructed or burned. But we stand with the people of Venezuela, and we stand with Juan Guaido. Maduro has to go. We've made that very clear for a number of reasons. The we is the President, the Vice President, the Secretary of State, Ambassador Bolton. I think that Secretary of State Pompeo put it best this morning when he said this is Operación Libertad, and this will finally get the Venezuelan people the freedom that they need. And 3 million Venezuelans have fled to neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil. So they've told you all you need to know. I'm sure they would prefer to be in their home country, but they simply can't stay there and be expected to survive or thrive. So we are watching it, monitoring. I got a briefing this morning before I came out, and they're monitoring very closely the situation there. We want a peaceful transition. Chavez stuck around for about 20 years. These things don't happen overnight, but in 3 short months, I think the world has seen the horrors of the Maduro regime. The average Venezuelan has lost about 20 pounds and over a year. That's just a tragedy. As the president has said many times, Venezuela was once one of the wealthiest countries in the world. It's now, you've seen what's happened to the people there. So these dictators to cling to power and wealth for their own purposes, they must go, beginning with Maduro.
On the immigration memo, could you give us some sense about how the administration arrived at the idea of charging fees for people who are seeking asylum? And isn't there a political problem at least for those people who have a bona fide claim that they're in danger and trying to
Remember,
get to
every asylum seeker presents that claim, and then the claim of credible fear, the claim of seeking credible asylum, those all need to be processed, which is how we got to this point in the first place, because we have a couple of judges apparently in charge of immigration policy for an entire country, even though Congress can step in the breach, do their job, and actually make laws. They can do a quick fix on Flores, the decision that doesn't allow us to keep children more than 20 days. They can fix catch and release. Frankly, they can fix asylum. They can fix the visa overstays. They just refuse to act. They're so busy doing nothing most of the time that they can't actually make laws for an entire country. It's very frustrating. It was frustrating to me when the Republicans in charge. It's frustrating now that Democrats are in charge of the House. But on asylum seekers, we have to process those claims, and we need to do it in a more speedy fashion. I'll tell you something that caught my eye. I have to go back and see the source of the poll. But this morning I saw in one of your reports that there's a 17% increase since January among Democrats who believe we have a crisis at the border. So thank you very much for stopping saying foolish things like caravanish and there's no crisis and it's manufactured. It's real. We see it. It's a humanitarian national security crisis. And asylum seekers are looking for the privilege of coming into the United States of America. Not every claim is credible. Some claims are credible, and we don't want those who have a credible claim of fear and asylum to be hamstrung in the process by those who don't, because they're lying about it, because they're grabbing the hand of a child, and God knows what happens to that child, because they know it's easier to come into this country. Even CNN ran a whole segment on that. Caught my eye.
You were talking about roads and bridges and schools. Does the president consider the border wall an infrastructure project? And also, why is the meeting closed press today?
Well, the infrastructure, certainly the wall is part of infrastructure, but that's not what we're talking about today. Maybe he'll mention it. But it tells you how important it is that the first infrastructure projects really should be to secure our sovereign nation and give it borders that are real and that work. But this is about all across the country, all 50 states, all Americans can benefit from this nation building things again. This nation stop ignoring the fact that our bridges are crumbling, our roads are in disrepair, and that we have all these water main breaks, an air traffic control system that I'm sure we've all been victim of at some point or another, where there's just hassle and inconvenience, and maybe not the most safety that we could have if we were to improve and modernize. Infrastructure is also rural broadband. It's also the 5G. It's artificial intelligence. It's harnessing all of the technology of the 21st century, and we're 19 years into it, Francesca, to help this country thrive and improve its basic infrastructure. So I know people like to joke it's Infrastructure Week again. I'm very happy that it's bipartisan infrastructure day anyway, and that the Democrats are coming here. I only hope that they're honest brokers, that this is about infrastructure.
So why is the meeting closed press though? Why won't we get to hear them talk about all of those things?
Well, you can get them to hear it here, but I think they behave differently. Some people behave differently when the press is in the room than when they're not. Having been in the room when the press is there, and having been in the Situation Room where it's closed press and in the Situation Room, I can assure you.
And he won't demand
that is
funding for the
different.
border wall.
Title 10 lawsuit doesn't block the rules, the new Title 10 lawsuit. What's
Well,
your
that's
reaction?
one judge in one place, and we'll see what happens as one court in one place. We've seen what happens when activist judges try to put their own points of view and politicization into the judicial process, which they should not do. That's on solid constitutional ground. The Title 10 funding is very simple. We spend over $500 million a year in taxpayer money on Planned Parenthood, which is the nation's largest abortion provider, makes a boatload of money providing abortions, is for, I suppose, sex selection abortions, late-term abortions, abortion anyone, anytime, anywhere, refers for abortions many times more than it refers anybody to a crisis pregnancy center. And basically, you take that money. I always tell the president, take the money and add more money and give it to the qualified women's health centers that actually provide services like mammograms, which Planned Parenthood doesn't, but don't provide abortions. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop using the word abortion as a euphemism for women's health, women's health is a euphemism for abortions. So these places provide. They provide cancer screenings and women's health services and mammograms. You don't, Planned Parenthood. but they don't provide abortion. So move the fight. If you want to get an abortion in this country, get an abortion. But the government shouldn't have to pay for that any more than I should pay for Viagra. You shouldn't pay for somebody's abortion. No offense, of course.
The president on infrastructure, does the president support raising the gas tax to potentially pay for some of this?
The president has not said that, and the president actually tweeted out about it this weekend. And if this is a ruse to come out to the sticks and say, we just got the president, we just handed him the bill, he's going to raise the gas tax, he's going to increase taxes. This president has lowered taxes. This president is responsible for a booming economy that doesn't happen by accident. In fact, has never happened before. It's his reduction in taxes, including taxes on businesses that went from 35% to 21%. The individuals all benefited. You've got middle class is booming now, despite what Joe Biden says. I don't know exactly what country he's talking about when he says he needs to rebuild the middle class. He also just sounds like someone who wasn't vice president for 8 years. He's got this whole list of grievances of what's wrong with the country, as if he didn't work in this building for 8 years. We inherited that big mess and are turning that battleship around. But him aside and his nonsense aside, you can make a speech, but you don't have to make sense, apparently. That aside, this president is the guy who lowers taxes, who has repatriated trillions of dollars of wealth coming back that was legally parked overseas, that is helping small business owners and other large employers to give these bonuses and give these benefits. It's double the child care tax credit. So this needs to be paid for, there's no question. But I'm just happy that the Democrats actually aren't listening to the freshmen who think Maduro should stay in power, I guess who think prisoners, hardened criminals should vote, terrorists should vote from jail, who want to do away with the private health care system, the 180 million Americans who rely upon it, the 60 million American seniors and disabled who rely upon Medicare for all. They want you to have the $32 trillion bill. They want to bankrupt you and bankrupt the country on this nonsense of health care. And by the way, while I'm on the subject of Biden, since he's hovering over everything now, is he for Medicare for all? Because Medicare for all means that Obamacare didn't work. So I'm just curious if he's dumped Obama-Biden care. I know 28 million Americans who don't have any health insurance because of Obama-Biden care. But I'm just curious if he's for Medicare for all. You might want to ask him. And is he against infrastructure? Because he sat in this place. I've been here for just over 2 years. He was here for over 8, and he's been in government for nearly 50 years. Why are the roads and ridges crumbling? Why is our air traffic control system in such disrepair? Why do those water main breaks? Why do they look the other way at so many things? More people are coming out of prison, more people are going to the workforce, more people are in drug treatment, more people are not under the yoke of regulations because of this president, not because of him and the president he served.
It sounds like a gas tax hike is off.
A question on veterans. Last week, the president tweeted that he agreed with AOC that the VA is doing great and is not broken. At least 22 veterans have committed suicide at VA centers in the last 18 months. How can the president say that?
Well, the president is saying that the VA is getting better now because of him, because of the Mission Act, otherwise known as the VA Choice Act. Speaking of veteran suicides, the president in the last month signed an executive order about veteran suicides because we recognize there are about 22 or 23 a day, as we hear. But we inherited a broken VA system for some veterans, for many veterans. You know that there were delays in care. You know that some veterans literally died waiting for care. We all saw the examples in Arizona, but they weren't isolated examples. This president has done so much for veterans, and I'll tick off a quick list. For the first time, we have a 24/7 veterans hotline here at the White House. You can call for any reason and all reasons, and indeed they do. The VA Choice, otherwise known as the VA Mission Act, allows veterans who cannot access timely quality care at the VA, which many say they can. Those who can't access timely and quality care at the Veterans Administration hospitals can do so through the private system, and Medicaid reimbursement will be there. So they have more choices in the healthcare system. The president also, at an American Legion event probably a year and a half ago in Reno now, gave a disposition of veterans benefits for hundreds of thousands that were unsure of them. And we keep on doing, veterans is actually partly in my portfolio as well. And what we're doing for active military spouses, the unemployment rate among them is 4 times the unemployment rate among women, because it's basically young moms who are the military spouses now. So we're doing many things for veterans. I think the president's point to AOC is, don't deny that it was broken when he got here, because it's part of why he ran. He ran in part because of the VA. He had a 10-point plan to help veterans that he released the week of the Democratic National Convention, as I remember.
So the VA is fixed. It's not
broken.
broken.
No, the VA is not fixed. It was under Joe Biden's lack of leadership. It was a disaster and a disgrace. And now it's getting much better because this president is actually not turning a blind eye. All of these veterans who can now access care in the private system, the way maybe you and I can through our health insurance, they can do that now, and they can do that because of this president. Also, the Whistleblower and Accountability Act in the VA, the ability to fire many employees at the VA who were underperforming and weren't helping the veterans. All of this is because of President Trump's leadership and his tenure here. And if we're going to go backwards and undo that, that would really be a tragedy for those veterans that he's helped.
Venezuela, is there any discussion of U.S. military support of Guaido? Is that?
Well, I believe our U.S. military has helped to deliver the supplies to tackle this humanitarian crisis, the people starving, not having access to basic food and medicine and things that they need to survive, let alone to thrive. So we are watching what's happening there. As you know, it's a breaking news story this morning. We've made very clear that Maduro must go. I'll make it clear again today. We stand with Juan Guaido. But we want a peaceful transition of power, and we want this dictator who starves his own people, who denies them medical care and medicine, who's just been cruel and inhumane toward the Venezuelans, 3 million of whom have fled to neighboring countries like Colombia and Brazil. We want that to stop, and we want the Venezuelans to enjoy everyday liberty.
Kellyanne, concerned about the designation of the Muslim Brotherhood could complicate or could create diplomatic complications and ramifications.
Do you find the Muslim Brotherhood to be part of our diplomatic relation talk?
No, they have like about 5 million members spread across governments in the region. Would that complicate your work?
No. Next.
Anything on al-Baghdadi? Has the president been briefed, and what's the White House's response?
I don't have a response for you.
Has the president been briefed?
The president is briefed on everything all the time.
Kellyanne, infrastructure. Democrats specifically say in their letter they want an emphasis on combating climate change. Is that something the president is open to considering, specifically with airports and roads? Is this a principle that he's open to, or is that a deal breaker?
I think that they are coming here because when the Green New Deal, even though they're like, yay, we need a Green New Deal. I've got all the quotes on my desk of the 2020 aspirants on the Democratic side who said, we must have the Green New Deal. This is important. One of them, languishing in the polls, I think tied with a margin of error in most polls, has said that this is our World War III. This is akin to World War II, or maybe it was World War III, I lost count. But complete nonsense, gibberish, and overreach talk, when then it goes to a vote in the United States Senate and not a single Democrat, including those running for president and making joyful noises about it, has the courage to vote in favor of the Green New Deal. So that should not be brought to the White House today under the guise of infrastructure.
So there's a Trojan horse.
Well, I'm just telling you that if it couldn't get support among the Democrats in the United States Senate, then it certainly isn't going to get support here in the Trump White House.
The Green New Deal, and if it's just combating climate change, is that something the president's open to taking?
This is about infrastructure. If they're talking about
build an airport, you do have to perhaps consider this. Is this something that the president will take into consideration?
If you're talking about the larger package and all the implications, we're here to listen. They requested the meeting. We're happy to have it. The president is an excellent listener, believe me. Forgets very little, if nothing, if anything, and we're here to listen. Hopefully they're serious. They'll come with a plan. And this should be a much more productive meeting than the ones where they came here time after time, with the cameras rolling or not rolling, denying there was a crisis at the border, saying it was just manufactured. The president gave his only Oval Office address on it, and then it was followed up by Chuck and Nancy, who said it was a manufactured crisis. Now 17% jump among their Democrats, according to new polling since January, saying it is a crisis. I'm glad people agree. Very respectfully happy that Secretary DHS under President Obama, Jay Johnson, agrees. People at Border Patrol, career people at ICE, they all agree we have a crisis at the border. Believe what you see, not what you're told.
Kellyanne, were you saying earlier?
Infrastructure bill, Kellyanne. How do you pay for it?
Well, there are many different ways to pay for it. You could have private-public partnerships. I know the Democrats will want to raise taxes, but they want to raise taxes for everything. These are the people who want to raise your taxes to take away your private health insurance. They want to raise your taxes to pretend that they're giving you free college. It's got to be paid some. Go ask them how they're paying for free housing, free college, free health care, free cars for people. Free speech may not cost anything, but that's about it. Everything else that they're offering you that has the word free, be very skeptical, because they don't know how to pay for that.
Straightened out later then.
Well, look, the conversation today is let's find out how to agree on what infrastructure is and what needs to be done. We put out a plan before, and we also are talking about, I'm remiss in not mentioning the permitting process. We have this just Byzantine labyrinth, never-ending, infinite, open-ended permitting process. And the president has talked about other countries where the permitting process is shorter, but you as a citizen can still comment. You can still issue public comments about your concerns about a permit being approved. But you can't do it forever. You can't just have these extensions. So we can compress, again, Donald Trump's a builder, not a politician. He's not a typical politician, not a politician at all. And so if we can compress that permitting process and get more building going on in this country and these repairs done, I think nobody can deny that the roads, the bridges, the water mains, the air traffic system, ATC, control system is in disrepair.
Were you saying
Kellyanne,
earlier that
10,000 falsehoods, misrepresentations of the facts, or lies?
How many of them are about there being a manufactured crisis at the border?
I guess my question is, why should Americans believe the president when he's? Why is no collusion? Simple question. 10,000 mistruths.
One of them. No. Excuse me. Are you willing to? Wait. I'm sorry. Are you willing to? Because you've been letting lies fly for years, and you know it, all of you. And let me just say one that one. Excuse me. One that. Excuse me. Then let me answer a question. You just want that to go viral. I noticed somebody told me one yesterday, because I don't read it. One yesterday is that the president said when he had one of the teams in here honoring one of the teams, that he had Big Macs piled a mile high, and somebody said they weren't piled a mile high. Okay, so anyhow, you let the lie fly for years about so many things about this president, including that there was a criminal conspiracy, that there was collusion, that he would be indicted, maybe he should be impeached, that people at the upper echelon of the Trump campaign were talking to Russians. And I'm still waiting for apologies. I'm sure they'll never come. But I'm not getting a lecture from sanctimonious people riding their white horses or their high horses who for years let their viewers and their readers and their tweeters or whatever it is you all do all day these days, you let them think that somehow he's a Russian asset, that somehow we were campaign I ran to a successful conclusion is talking to Russians. We didn't have time to do that. Hillary Clinton, you want to give her a platform? Who? I'm a woman who works in the White House. Who? You want to give her a platform still? Poor Hillary, she's going to mock the president reading the Mueller report. She's saying that Russian interference. I like the fact that she's focused on page 2 of volume 1. So am I. That the Russians tried to systematically interfere in the election, but they were unsuccessful and unaided by the Trump campaign. Have her finish the sentence.
Does the president not lie about a single thing,
Kellyanne, were you saying earlier that increasing the gas tax is off the table with regard to infrastructure?
What I said was, if the Democrats are coming here to just have a climate change bill and try to raise taxes for the greatest tax-cutting president in modern times, they should rethink that, because they should come here ready to talk about these bridges and these tunnels and these roads and the air traffic control system, rural broadband, 5G, artificial intelligence, the way technology can help us with our infrastructure as well. There are so many issues that are critical to improving our nation's infrastructure, repairing and improving our nation's infrastructure. All I'm saying, Darlene, is that they couldn't get the Green New Deal passed. Even in the Senate, got 0. Let me just say, this does not mean A-OK. Goose egg, 0 votes from Democrats, including all the ones running in 2020 who lie, because they're never under oath when they give these silly speeches or on your TV shows. They lie that they're for the Green New Deal, and then they get to vote on it, and they basically have the same position as Donald Trump. No to the Green New Deal. Stephen Moore, I guess, is doing great. And by the way, I've given speeches with him. We were speakers together. I got paid the exact same thing because I demanded it. I said, I'll have what he's having. I always take that line out when Harry met Sally. Well, the president stands behind him. And Stephen said yesterday in an interview or recently, if he feels like he's a liability, he'll pull his name out of contention. But for now, I guess that he feels comfortable, that he meaning Stephen feels comfortable that he would like to be considered. I saw an interview with him this morning or yesterday on CNBC where he is saying nobody's been more right about the economy in the last 4 months than he has. I know there are Nobel and I guess Pulitzer Prize winners about the economy have been dead wrong about the economy and this president. I guess they never had to get back their word, speaking of lies. But Stephen Moore has been right about the economy. He was very helpful to what ended up being the Tax Cut and Jobs Act as well. and he's somebody who gets the economy, and I guess we'll continue to focus on that, or we'll just have to just start cherry picking all the things that people have said and written over the years. That'll be fun someday.
You're a strong,
have a wonderful one.
Woman. Your comments, though, in response to his comments about.
But I know him personally. I know he's a good person.
So
I know that.
What do you make of his comments? At least what he's
But
said
again,
publicly
intent
about
matters.
more,
I'm a strong, successful woman who's worked with Stephen Moore for decades, and I know how he feels about it. I know how he treats women in the workplace. I know what he has said and done over the years, and that the economic policies that he puts forth help women in the workplace, help those single moms who now have a doubling of the child care tax credit, help those single moms like I had to double that individual exemption. I mean, my mom used to put clothes on layaway at Kmart. I appreciate the Stephen Moores of the world and not the Paul Krugmans who, Nobel Peace Prize along or whatever, Nobel Prize for Economics aside, are just dead wrong about the economy. I appreciate people who want to deregulate small businesses like the ones my family ran for many years. No, what I'm comfortable with is looking at the totality of everyone, which none of you ever seem to want to do. I look at the full, total person. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here. I would just scream insults at you and walk in the building. But I like to look at the totality of individuals. And I'll just leave that.
Hey, Kellyanne, one more thing. You brought up Joe Biden several times unprompted. Do you guys see him?
How is it unprompted? He's the front runner.
We didn't ask. No, well, that's what I'm asking you.
But
Do you consider him the front runner and the president?
Why aren't you asking me? Well, the polls say he's the front runner. Tell me, what is the problem, Francesca, with the Democratic primary electorate? That are they sexist and racist? Do they not want all these women who are running, all these people of color? Because apparently you got the two old white, straight men, career politicians in the lead, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. You got to go take that up with the Democratic primary electorate. I'm not in their polling. Donald Trump doesn't vote in the Democratic primaries. So let's take it up with them, why Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders are the front runners. They have a problem with the rest of the field.
Consider them to be the most formidable challengers to President Trump?
No, and not necessarily, because it's so early in the process. At this stage, in 2015, Donald Trump hadn't even come down the escalator yet with his family. And he got center stage on August 6, 2015 in that first debate and never lost center stage. It's pretty remarkable, given the fact that 17 people ran. So these polls, as opposed to 2012, where Romney was the eventual nominee, but not before about 7 or 8 different people had taken the lead at some point in the polling. Everybody from Vic Santorum to who was running, Newt Gingrich, to Mike Huckabee was running, to, different people had taken the lead at some point. Michelle Bachmann was in the lead, Rick Perry at some point. But Donald Trump in 2016, improbably to all of you in your polling, that he took center stage in that first debate and never lost center stage. So I think the debates will be very winnowing. But it's not lost on us who the two frontrunners are among the Democratic primary electorate, where I don't vote, where Donald Trump doesn't vote. So we're just watching the way the Democrats assess their own field. So apparently they don't want. They don't want. I didn't say that. I think the best way for the president to get reelected is what he does in this building. It's all the economic prosperity. They want to run against Donald Trump. They have to run against Donald Trump's economy too. They have to run against Donald Trump getting the remains of our brave men who fell in Korea back home, getting 19 or 20 hostages back home. Some of these hostages were there, most of them were there when Vice President Biden was here. So he's going to be held to account. And I know he said that I asked President Obama not to endorse me. I'm too busy getting the endorsement of the firefighters, but I don't want a popular president among the Democrats, first African-American president, to endorse me. Do any of you believe that? You let him get away with his first lie. Why'd you do that? So I will ask him, if you're not going to, hey, Vice President Biden, why are 28 million Americans without health insurance 9 years after Obama-Biden care passed? He should be asked that. And I think Bernie Sanders doesn't care what his party thinks, is connecting directly with people, and is raising money in small amounts, and goes out and has very specific points of view, which is why he's got a following. He's a lot like Donald Trump, except for good ideas, and ideas that are mainstream, and ideas that are part of a democracy and not socialism.
Republican plan for those folks then? The president hasn't presented one.
What, for the health care? Yeah. Oh, we're working on it. I'm actually on the team that's working on that. It's a very large team, and I will tell you, I'll give you some principles. I'll give you some things that are important to the president.
Principles, 2.5 years into the details. Will we have them before?
Yeah, you'll have the details. Sure. He said that after he gets the House back in 2020, and people who aren't for uprooting the private health care system and the 180 million, including all of you, I assume, who rely upon it, and the 60 million seniors and disabled who rely upon Medicare for all. And by the way, you know who really gets hurt under Medicare for all? Women. Because women are disproportionately the healthcare consumers in our country. They control roughly 2 out of every 3 healthcare dollars spent, and they're disproportionately the healthcare providers. Do you have any idea how many women work in the health and medical industry? Where will their jobs go? Do Bernie Sanders and I guess Joe Biden, if he's for Medicare for all, don't know, didn't hear much about it yesterday. What are they going to do about all the women who lose their jobs? Should they just repurpose themselves and figure out a way to help the Green New Deal be implemented? I mean, this is just not thought through, but women would be irreparably harmed, disproportionately harmed by Medicare for all, by this government takeover, socialized medicine takeover. The president is for protecting pre-existing conditions, dead stop, non-negotiable. We also will be strengthening and improving Medicare and Medicaid. Through his leadership, Medicaid is able to use their dollars more creatively. For example, we have a 64% increase in the number of Americans who are in medication-assisted treatment for drugs. He said that in his speech last week in Atlanta. You didn't cover it much, but we got about 100 outlets locally to cover it because they see people dying right in front of them where they live. So in addition, we're looking at rural health, tribal health, maternal health. The opioid crisis is part of it, of course. And also, this president wants to make sure that health insurance in this country doesn't bankrupt you, the individual, and doesn't bankrupt the nation. We ought to be able to do that, but we're very concerned about the 28 million Americans who were, well, everybody was lied to that you can keep your plan and keep your doctor, but 28 million Americans have no health insurance, none. 9 years after Obama and Biden crowed about their health insurance plan. Why is that? Why have the Democrats all moved on from Obamacare into Medicare for all? And in fact, does that include Joe Biden? Is he abandoning, or let's just say, is Joe Biden not endorsing Obamacare the way Obama's not endorsing Joe Biden? I wonder. Have a great day.